Welcome to this episode of Leap Forward with Riesterer Schnell. Today we're talking about all things service, and I'm here with Jason from our Chilton location. Jason, what do you do?
I'm service manager at Chilton, and been doing this for, well, since 2002. I graduated high school. I was a technician for, well, I don't remember, the years kind of run together. I don't have the specific dates, but I've been doing the service manager thing for a bunch of years now as well. After I did worked on the road, fixing stuff, mainly worked with the equipment side of it, so corn planters and sprayers, forage harvesters, things like that. So.
Okay, and I am Katie Bohm out of Pulaski. I've been with the company about 7 years, just over 7. I started as a service writer and recently changed roles to machine monitoring specialist. So been doing that since April. One thing that with the temperature, it's getting cold outside, winterization.
Yeah, that this time of the year is real critical for that. Obviously we're in Wisconsin, so you could probably have it as early as some of the first weeks in September, but we've had a really nice fall so far this year. Here in Chilton, we actually haven't had any freezing temperatures yet, but one thing we would like to talk about is, for instance, winterization of sprayers, planters, really important. Basically anything that has a water-based, any solution that you're using is water-based if it's in your machine, and that could even include inoculant systems on the forage harvesters or balers. Some of the acids isn't a big deal. The acids don't freeze solid. They have their own properties to kind of keep them from creating damage to your system. But I think a real important thing that we should talk about and discuss just a little bit, being this time of year, is how important it is to get a machine winterized. So for instance, the new sprayers out right now running the exact apply nozzles, with those exact apply nozzles being electronically controlled out at each place of application. The exact apply nozzles, for instance, are $422 a piece. A 90-foot boom is going to have approximately, depending upon your setup, may have 72 exact apply nozzles on them. And if you just do the math, that's you could be at $30,000 in repair parts simply because it wasn't winterized. And exact apply nozzles is really critical to talk about. It's a very precise unit with a lot of small plungers, O-rings and stuff in them, and if we get any freezing, even at 31 degrees for probably more than a half an hour, we can already start to damage those components inside there. So very, very critical to have a sprayer winterized. Now with exact apply nozzles, we're also starting to see that on our corn planters, to get that precision application of fertilizer. So a planter would also have these systems on. We have things here, winterization programs that we can do, but the real main thing is that it gets done on your machine at your farm or your operation, and that starts with a very thorough flush of the system to get any old chemical out, or product if it's fertilizer, because that can affect winterizing solutions. It can mix or interact with that inappropriately, possibly even make the winterizer solution not work as well as it's supposed to once we are in those freezing temperatures. So again, we start out with a really good flush, make sure we have no chemical fertilizer left, and then we'd run a John Deere winterizing solution through the machine, every part of the machine. So all of our valving underneath, our pumps, run it through our boom, back through our rinse lines to the tanks. Basically, we have to run that sprayer essentially like it was running in the field, so that we have winterizer fluid run through the entire machine to protect it.
So if I bring my sprayer or planter in for winterization, is there also inspection programs that we could do along with that?
Yeah, Yep, there absolutely is. If you did have the machine brought in for just for winterization because that needs to be done, while it's here, we can also go through and get into an inspection on the machine. And talking about the inspections, a little bit about the inspections, it's really, we have inspections that are, you know, I don't even really like to myself. I don't even like to put down a multi-point inspection because it's really more than multi-point. It's. I mean,
fine tooth comb.
Yes, it's a fine tooth comb thing that we do. Let's just take a combine for instance, right? So a combine, we're not just going around and walking around the machine looking for leaks and checking the batteries. You know, on a combine, for instance, all the belts that are tensioned on the machine for running in the field, every one of those belts is loosened because we can't actually see a bad bearing when the belt is tensioned on it. You'd be surprised at how much force it takes to go against the tension belt, and you would miss the possibility of a bearing that's getting loose. So that's the things that we're looking for in an inspection is, you know, obviously if there's a bearing that's already failed, that's going to be pretty obvious, but most people are going to catch that. We are going a step or two further and prying on each one of those bearings, and they should not have much play. I mean, there's a little bit of play, but anything that's more than we consider tolerable, we're going to put that down on a list. And like I said, that's a combine. On a tractor, if we had a tractor in for inspection, you know, again, we're not just driving it into the shop and just taking a look at it. Every one of the axles will be raised off the ground. While we do that, we're watching for that axle to move, and that's a sign that we have a problem coming up maybe in the axle, whether rear or front axle. You know, there's a lot of base things that we always check on every machine, right? I talked about it, the batteries, right? We're going to test the batteries. We're going to make sure that when we're doing a run out on it, which is part of the inspection, actually running to it, driving it, listening to it, we're going to make sure that we're putting out 13.5, 14 volts charging, right? So that the alternator's working. On the tractors, a real critical thing for tractors is obviously the engine and the transmission for pulling, or PTO running an implement that way. But another thing that can get missed and is hard to diagnose is the hydraulic system. So hydraulic system on a tractor should flow on any given model. It's a spec for that model depending upon how big the pump is, but should be putting out, say, 25 gallons per minute at a certain pressure. Every tractor is checked that way, so we put it on a hydraulic flow rater. If we're 5 gallons short already, it could just be filters, you know,
right.
But it could also be the sign of maybe a pump that's getting weak. So those are things that are written down. You know, sprayers, obviously plumbing is a big thing on them. And then we talked about exact apply nozzles, right, for the winterizing. We also get into them and just check for wear on the little plungers that are inside them so that we can hopefully get them replaced, or talk about it off season so that when in season you don't have some nozzles that start to misfire or misapply. And you know, the list goes on and on. Corn planters, you know, the obvious ones is going to be coulter diameter and stuff like that, but we're also checking for bearings on them. We're checking the condition of the belts. We're checking the seat bowls, things like that. With the checklist, another thing I would mention, you know, when we do a checklist, here is what we really try and do is to make a list, all right? And basically everything we find wrong, we like to put on the list and try and put a number to that, an estimated number. And we really like to have the customers come down.
Yeah, and
or
go
at least,
through it. Yeah,
you know, because I think it's always better if they can see what we're looking at. And some of the lists might get pretty long. But again, in the end, it's up to the customer what they feel they need to have repaired here at the shop, for instance, or some of the items they may take it back home and say, well, I can handle those things.
Right.
That's fine. We're really just concerned about finding all this stuff. So when we come back into season, we had a pretty good idea.
And the techs are pretty good about that too. Like, they'll tell you the most urgent like, you need to do this, it's definitely not going to make it next season.
Yes, and I think that's the important thing with. That's really why we like to have our customers come down when we're doing these checklists. Is for that reason. If you talk over the phone or whatever, you say a bearing is failing.
Right.
You could take that a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
Right? And in a lot of situations, when we say it on a machine, we're probably seeing a bearing that's starting to fail.
Right.
A lot of customers are going to say, well, there's really nothing wrong with that. Those are the ones we're trying to catch. Like I said earlier, bearing that's out, well, that's an obvious one on the list.
Well, and we're going through it in a different light, too, where different scenarios, the belts aren't tensioned, things like that. So then they can actually see what you're seeing.
Right.
And
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. And it helps them to see, on the side of the machine, if, that doesn't look like that bad of a bearing to change, they would have the option to possibly just take care of that themselves. But you see another one where you can't hardly see it, and we spend 5 minutes with a flashlight showing it to them. You might want to have us change that one.
Yeah.
Just not have to deal with that.
Good. So how do we get involved with this inspection program? Show me how a customer, I have this combine and I would like to get it inspected. How would I go about that?
Yep. Well, basically it starts with a phone call. Give us a call. And essentially what we do, and we started that already this year, getting to the end of October, give us a call, we get it on a list. Because, with winter inspections, it's not I need it right now. We have until it needs to be in the field next season. So all the machines that we might be going through, it's not necessarily call and I'm going to bring it in that week. Call and get us on the list, get it on the list so that we can apply the special pricing that we usually do in the winter time. And then after that, it goes on the list, and as we can bring the machines in, we'll generally call the customer and say, hey, I'm ready to bring that machine in. If everything goes smooth, depending upon how much work it does or doesn't need, or how much they want us to work on it, it can be here a couple weeks. But as soon as we're done, we have all the parts and the repairs finished, and we call them back and we schedule it to get it back to them.
Can I also schedule it with a technician? Say I have a guy out on a service call and he notices something. Can I let him know?
Absolutely. Because that's another way we do it. If a technician's out there and said, they may even ask you about it, or maybe even suggest it if they see a couple extra things that maybe could use attention but not right now. They may even say, hey, do you want to sign it up for a checklist? And if they don't, then you know about it. Just mention it to them.
Right.
And then they can bring it back to the store and we can get it on the list just the same. So, like I said, scheduling is kind of, is a little bit first come, first serve. If we do get behind and we run out of time, unfortunately, that can happen. So as they're signed up, is how we try and go through them. So
even signing up before I'm done with harvest would be a good idea. If I know I want to get it done.
If you know you want your machine signed up, you should definitely get it signed up, because we can get pretty busy, So there's been a couple of years where we run short on time and get hard to get them all done. So Katie, before you were mentioning when we were doing introductions, talking about machine monitoring specialists, you want to talk about that a little bit? What is that?
Sure. So machine monitoring specialist is a new position for me. I spend the majority of my day working in an enhanced machine dashboard. It gives me every connected machine that we have through all 14 locations, mostly 12. 2 of our locations are not ag, but and anytime that you have a connected machine through JD Link, it's communicating back with us. I can see any diagnostic trouble code, or DTCs, that come through on your machine. So if it occurs that you get one code multiple times, or it stays active for a certain period of time, it will generate what John Deere has named an expert alert. And an expert alert is a tool for our technicians. Sometimes it's a simple phone call to the customer too, and I'm able to help them out that way. It will tell me what the customer might be experiencing, what triggered the code, because sometimes it's not a diagnostic trouble code that triggers it. It could just be pressure readings. And they include interactive solutions. So step by step goes through diagnostics with that technician, or it can go through that with the customer on the phone. When those are triggered, I reach out to the customer, ask them if they're having any issues, kind of walk through that expert alert with them, and see if they need any assistance with that. If they do, then I would get in contact with you or whoever the service manager is at that store to get it on the list. So the technician actually gets that alert on their work order and they can go through.
Yep.
This is saving diagnostic time because it's step by step. Like, they've seen this a number of times. They can give feedback too, which is really important. Right now, John Deere will utilize any of our warranty claims to help build these expert alerts, and this is what we found because of this being triggered, or this pressure was at this for an hour prior. Now they can utilize all that information even outside of warranty and just give the most information. I want our technicians to have the most information possible. It's right down to, what parts should I take with me now? Might not use them, but if I have them in stock and I know that that might be a cause, I might as well load that in the truck. So it's saving the technician time, the customer time, and preventing downtime is really what we're trying to do.
Right. So you were mentioning codes, right? So customers generally have definitely seen a code come up in their machine before, but you were saying that there's stuff that they may not even see.
Correct.
That might trigger these.
Yeah. They don't see everything on their display. What pops up in the display as a pop-up is typically something the operator himself can fix, whether that's changing a procedure of operation that he is doing, or she, or can quickly check on the machine. If it's anything above and beyond that they feel they would need us for, having it just pop up in the screen and say, contact your John Deere dealer about this issue, begins to be more of a nuisance code, and they're going to ignore it. So we see those on the back end. A lot of times there are associated codes, though, too, that initial first check will be visible to the customer. But we really see anything in the background as well that might be going on. There's a lot of interactive charts that I can see over time as well, of when did this happen, when did this occur, and that's all things I go through with the customer when I make contact.
Yep.
We've also found too that they're not always the operator of the equipment. They might have somebody else in the cab who maybe isn't watching those codes. So we do like to contact one set person per operation to oversee the fleet and get it taken care of.
Sure.
All right, Jason. Well, it was nice visiting with you today.
You too,
Thanks
Katie.
for telling me all about the winterization and inspection process. Thank you all for tuning in to us, and be sure to find any of our other episodes or upcoming episodes on our YouTube channel or wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks again.
We're your John Deere dealer, coming through for you, Riesterer and Schnell.